Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. In today's session, we are going to explore the basic understanding of Prometheus configuration. So let's uncover how Prometheus configuration work and how they enable effective monitoring of our system. So these are the table of contents which you are going to learn today. So let's start. So what is Prometheus configuration file? Prometheus configuration file is a YAML-based document that outlines how Prometheus should scrape, collect, and process metrics from various targets. So it defines parameters such as scrape intervals, targets to scrape, and rules for alerting, providing the blueprint for effective monitoring setups. Now let's understand how the Prometheus determine what to scrape and when. So let's break down the process of how Prometheus determine what to scrape and when, along with the related aspects in a step-by-step manner. So first is the configuration setup. So here you can find that the Prometheus is configured through a YAML file called as prometheus.yaml file. So here you can see on the screen that this is the default prometheus.yaml file after we installed the Prometheus on our server. So in this file, you define script configuration which include targets, scraping intervals, and the alerting rules. So it will set the scraping interval. So scraping interval defines how frequently Prometheus should scrape metrics from each target. Then it will define the target. So the targets are the endpoint from which Prometheus scrapes metrics. So this could be HTTP endpoint database or any other exposing metric. Then we can use the alert rule to define condition or threshold based on metrics data that trigger alerts. So you define alerting rules in Prometheus.yaml file under the alerting section. So when an alerting rule is triggered, Prometheus generates alerts that can be routed to various alerting channels like email, Slack, etc. Next is the scraping metrics and the storage. So Prometheus scrape the metrics from configured targets based on the scraping interval. And scrape metrics are stored in Prometheus time series data. So Prometheus uses its query language PromQL to query and retrieve metrics data for visualization, analysis, and alerting purpose. So in summary, Prometheus determines what to scrape and when based on the configuration defined in the Prometheus.yaml file, which include defining targets, scraping intervals, service discovery mechanism, alerting rules, and alerting channel. Now we will. So there are some prerequisites you should know. So you need to have an AWS EC2 instance with sudo access, and you need to have installed Prometheus on that instance, and you need to enable the port number which is 1990, which is of Prometheus. Now we will understand the default Prometheus configuration file. So it includes global configuration, alert manager configuration, role files, and script configuration in Prometheus. So let's learn one by one. So as you can see on screen, this is the default configuration. So first, so the default Prometheus.yaml file serves as the main configuration file for Prometheus, defining how Prometheus should scrape, collect, and process metrics from various targets within your infrastructure. So here you can find the global configuration in Prometheus. So it sets configuration that apply universally across Prometheus. So here you can find in global, scrape interval and evaluation interval type parameters are used. So in this default, scrape interval parameter will determine how frequently Prometheus will scrape targets for metric. In this case, it is set to 15 seconds, meaning Prometheus will collect metrics from configured target every 15 seconds. And the evaluation interval specifies the interval at which Prometheus evaluates rule and generates alert. Next, you can find the configuration or alert manager. So this section will configure how Prometheus communicates with the alert manager. So the alert manager will define a list of alert manager instances that Prometheus can set alert to. And the static config will specify the static configuration for alert manager targets. However, in this provided configuration, there are no targets specified. Next is the role files in Prometheus. So the role files section defines which role files Prometheus should load and periodically evaluate. So this section, as you can see, is currently commented out. It means that no role files are being loaded at the moment. And role file containing alerting and recording rules written in Prometheus query language, which is prompt query. Next, we will learn about the script configuration in Prometheus. So it defines the targets and that Prometheus will scrape for metrics. So it included parameters like job name and static config, static configuration. So job name will specify the label that Prometheus will attach to script metrics, allowing for easier identification and filtering. And the static config will indicate that targets are statically defined within the configuration file. So it will have the targets will specify the endpoint. In this case, it is set to localhost with the port enabled in 1990 from which Prometheus will scrape the metrics. So this is the default address where the Prometheus server itself exposes its metrics. So we have learned about the prometheus.yml file default configuration. Now we will move forward and see the different Prometheus configuration file types and its use cases. So Prometheus configuration file can vary significantly based on the requirements of the monitoring environment and the complexity of the infrastructure being monitored. So there are some common uses such as for basic configuration file, it includes essential settings like scrap interval targets and basic alerting configuration. And for advanced configuration files, it incorporates additional features like relabeling, custom service discovery, and federation configuration for scalability. So for basic, you can use a use case such as setting up Prometheus to monitor single application or service with straightforward metrics. And for advanced configuration, you can monitor complex environments with multiple services, microservices, and diverse metric endpoint. So according to your requirement, the Prometheus configuration file serves as a distinct purpose and you can use it according to your requirement and it can be customized and combined to meet the monitoring needs of different environments from small scale deployments to large distributed systems. Now we will learn about some different types of placeholders in Prometheus configuration file. So this is the article where you can find the explanation of all the points. So you can visit forcetechnics.com and you can find this article. So now let's move on to placeholder. So there are different types of placeholder used in the Prometheus configuration file. So here you can find this if you search on the search bar Prometheus configuration. So if you click on the first link, you will find this configuration documentation. So here you can find the generic placeholder examples. So first you can see as boolean. So boolean that can text the values such as true or false. So for boolean we can use the parameter like is enabled. So the boolean is used to toggle certain features or configuration within the Prometheus. So let's take an example. If you want to enable or disable specific alerting rules or script configuration based on the environment. So for staging, you can enable it as true, and for production, you can disable it and use false to disable it. Next is the duration. So a duration will represent the time. So it can be set for intervals and timeout. So for instance, you could use it to specify the retention period for metrics storage or the duration between consecutive evaluation of alerting tools. So this is the regular expression for the duration, which consists of year, week, days, hour, minute, second, and millisecond. So for example, is 1 day, 1 hour, 30 minutes, 5 minutes, and 10 seconds. So you can use this for retention period for metric storage or the duration between the evaluation of the alerting rules. Next threshold, next placeholder is the file name. So the file name can have a valid path in the current working directory. So the which file you required in the configuration, so you can add the file name in our Prometheus configuration. Next is the float placeholder. So the float can contain the threshold value. So it could be utilized in alerting rules for tri- triggering the alerts when a certain metric crosses a predefined threshold, such as CPU utilization exceeding 75%. So in this case, float can be useful. Next is the integer value. So this could used to specify the number of replicas or instances of a target application or services to be scraped. So it allows for dynamic adjustment of scraping targets based on the workload or traffic. Next is the host name. So it is a valid string consisting of host name or IP, which we follow by the optional port number. Next we are going to learn about the URL, which is path. So it can So this placeholder URL as well as the scheme. So scheme is a string that can take the values like HTTP or HTTPS. So this both scheme and path placeholder can be used to define the URL path and scheme for scraping metrics from external targets such as application servers or database. Next we will move on forward and see the secret placeholder. So secret is used to represent the sensitive information like password or API keys, and it can be used for authentication purposes when scraping metrics from secure endpoints or services. Next is the size. So this could be employed to specific size limits for response bodies during scraping, ensuring efficient resource usage and preventing memory overflow or performance degradation. Next is the template expanded string. So this will allow the dynamic metric naming based on template expansion, which can be useful for generating informative and structured metric name based on job names, instance ID, or other contextual information. Now we will look all the placeholder used in the default configuration. So below here you can see the placeholder are used in this configuration. So for example, in scrape interval, we use the duration placeholder. So as to scrape the targets by default, the duration can be specified in a human readable format. So here you can see it is set to default as 1 minute. So it can use for the scrape interval. Next you can see the duration placeholder is used to set the parameter for the scrape timeout. So which will set the timeout for scrape request. If a target doesn't respond within this time, the scrape request fails. As you can see, it can be set to 10 seconds or as per your requirement. Next, you can find the string placeholder, which can be used by the parameter scrape protocol. So it will define the protocol negotiated during the script. So it includes the supported values like Prometheus Proto, Open Metrics, and etc. Here you can find the evaluation. Next, you can see your evaluation interval, which uses the duration placeholder. So this will set the frequency for evaluating rules such as recording and alerting rules. So now it is set to 1 minute. So you can change it according to your requirement, and you can refer this configuration from the official website. So here you can find the label name and the label value. So this label add label to the time series or alerts. So when communicating with external system like remote storage or the alert manager, so it can use external labels. Next you can see the query log file, which uses string placeholder. So it will specify the file to which from QL queries are logged. Next placeholder which we are going to learn about the size. So as you can see, the body size limit, which sets the maximum size of an uncompressed response body before a scrape request fails. So the size placeholder will represent in bytes, allowing you to limit the size of uncompressed response body during scraping. So for example, if setting a body size limit, here you can find the parameter which is body size limit is set to 10 MB to prevent Prometheus from processing overly large responses during scraping. So it will ensure efficient resource usage. So you can change accordingly the size of the body size limit. Next you can find the sample limit, which is set to int. So this represents an integer value, allowing you to set limits on various aspects of scraping and metrics processing. So as it is set to default, so but consider as sample limit is set to 10,000 to ensure that Prometheus doesn't process more than 10,000 samples per script. So it will prevent from overload and resource exhaustion. And there are some other parameters which can use int placeholders such as label limit, label name length limit, and etc. Here you can find that. Next, here you can find the file path globe. So it is used for the rule files and script configuration files. So it will represent a file path or globe pattern to specify rule files and script configuration. So here you can see file path placeholder has been used. So if you consider a real-time scenario, it will specify rule files as etc Prometheus rules, etc. to include all rule files in etc, which you can set and create the directory called as rules. So it will allow for dynamic rule management and update. And below here you can find the script configuration, relabel configuration, alert manager configuration. So script will represent a script configuration which we have learned it will include target, metrics, path and other parameters. So for example, defining a script configuration for monitoring a Kubernetes cluster. So it will include targets for scripting various microservices and setting in appropriate script intervals and timeout. Then you can find the alert manager configuration. So it will specify the URL. So URL can be used as placeholder to specify parameter for alert manager configuration, which include the authentication credential for alert manager instance. Then you can find the remote write. So it will configure Prometheus metric to remote storage backend like Thanos or Cortex for long-term storage and analysis. At last, you can find some tracing configuration. So it is used to integrate Prometheus with distributed tracing system like Jaeger for correlating metrics and traces for enhanced observability. So all this placeholder which we have learned, which provides flexibility and customization option in Prometheus configuration. Now next we will see some best practices for Prometheus configuration files. So we can consider best practices such as modularization, so which will break down configuration into manageable chunks using separate files for different components or environments. So it will use tooling like Docker Compose or configuration management tools for effective management. Next practice is for version control. So it will store Prometheus configuration file in version control system like Git for tracking changes and enabling collaboration. And the configuration file can also be useful for documentation as it maintains detailed documentation alongside configuration file to facilitate understanding of troubleshooting. Next, it can be used for testing and validation. So utilize Prometheus built-in configuration testing and capabilities to ensure correct trace and reliability. Now let's learn about some advanced feature and use cases of Prometheus configuration file. So we can enable the Prometheus to ingest and query data from external storage system like Thanos or Cortex by using the remote write and remote read feature. Next is the alerting rules. As Prometheus configuration file define alerting rules, so basically it will trigger alerts based on the predefined condition. So you can edit your Prometheus configuration file according to your requirement. Next is the federation. So it will aggregate metrics from multiple Prometheus instances using federation, allowing centralized monitoring across distributed environment. So now you can refer all this in on the site posttechnics.com and you can find this article. So I will share the link in below description. So we will conclude for today. So in conclusion, understanding Prometheus configuration is fundamental for setting up effective monitoring system with the basics covered, and beginners can navigate Prometheus configuration file with confidence, customizing monitoring environments to suit their specific needs. So thank you for watching the video. And please do subscribe and like the video. And please subscribe our channel. See you in the next video. Thank you.